What's up, BookTube? It's Leah Cooper, and today I am bringing you a book review for the YA fantasy new release, Unravel the Dusk by Elizabeth Lim. So this is the sequel to her debut from last year, which was titled Spin the Dawn, and it's the conclusion to this Chinese-inspired YA fantasy. I received a ARC copy of this book via NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. All of my thoughts and opinions are 100% my own. I haven't been paid to say anything, etc., etc. So, since this is book 2 in a duology, I think I do need to say warning for potential spoilers. I don't think there's any way to talk about this book in depth without potentially spoiling something. Just be aware of that. It's really hard to review a sequel without spoiling something. That being said, I also think it's kind of impossible to talk about the sequel without talking about the first book a little bit. So I read Spin the Dawn late last year. It was one of my most anticipated releases for 2019, to be honest. I remember when the publisher acquired it, and I thought the tagline sounded fantastic. And the tagline is Mulan meets Project Runway. I was like, oh, yes. Like, that is great. And here's the thing. The parts of the first book that are Mulan meets Project Runway are great. And that's what's really tough about Spin the Dawn, is the first half to two-thirds is really excellent. Like, the first third is really the Mulan meets Project Runway aspects. And they're really enjoyable. They seem very well written. They're very entertaining. They're very compelling. The book follows our protagonist, Maya, and she is the only daughter in a family of sons. Her father is a tailor, and she is the one of all of her siblings who has his tailoring talent. But in this culture, in this society, a girl can be a seamstress. She can mend stuff, but she can't be a tailor. Her mother dies, and her father, it kind of falls apart with grief. And Maya is holding the family together, running the tailoring business under her father's name, and then a war breaks out and all of her brothers go to war and only one comes back. That's kind of the situation we're in. And then at the beginning of the first book, Maya's presented with the chance to go to compete to become the emperor's personal tailor, but obviously only a man can fill that role because only a man can be a tailor. So she disguises herself as one of her only living brother, and goes to compete. So there we get the Mulan meets Project Runway. And that part is really good. I really liked it. And I thought it was going to be one of my favorite books of last year. The second third of the first book, and I guess this is where spoilers from here on out. The second third of the book kind of becomes Siege and Storm. Which is maybe a weird comparison, but if you've read it, I think you'll see where I'm getting that comparison, where she has 3 mystical things she has to go find. It's exactly like Siege of Storm, right? Alina had to go get the magical MacGuffins. And that part was fine. Like, it wasn't my favorite. I didn't like it as much as the first third, but it was fine. The problem with the first book is that in the third act, it really goes off the rails. All of those Mulan meet Project Runway aspects disappear. They're no longer part of the story. The story just kind of becomes about politics and demons, but it doesn't feel super well developed. And it's just kind of frustrating. I remember getting to the end of the first book and feeling like the ending explicitly contradicted the beginning. I had to immediately go back to the beginning and reread it because I was like, wait, what? So altogether, it was such a mixed experience. But I wanted to give the sequel a second chance. In my heart, I kind of suspected it was going to follow the threads laid down in the third act. It was going to be just more of the third act. But I figured I would give it a chance first before I judged it, right? So that's what I did. I read the sequel, and like I suspected, it's the third act just continued. So it doesn't have any of those Mulan meets Project Runway aspects, and it suffers from a few more problems. And that's why ultimately I gave it a 2.5 stars. And I'm really sad to say that, to be honest, because I really did love the first half of Spin the Dawn. Um, and I've debated with myself back and forth whether or not I'm being too hard on Unravel the Dusk. And maybe I am. Like, I still haven't settled completely on whether or not I'm being too hard on it. So it picks up shortly after the end of the first book. And again, I don't know how to talk about this if you haven't. I think to spoilers. I think this entire video is just gonna have spoilers. I don't think I can do an unspoilery first half. Anyways, so spoilers. It picks up right at the end. We know Maya went to this island that was controlled by a demon because she needed to get the Tears of the Moon, and she got the Tears of the Moon, but she was also bitten or scraped, clawed, I don't remember the specifics, by the demon, and he's turning her into a demon. And also her love interest, who was the court wizard, has been freed. She did something, I think she like stole or broke his amulet. She did something to break his vow to the emperor, to free him from his vow to the emperor, because it's kind of one of those like genie type things where someone like holds his chain, his vow, and he's under their control, and so he's wizard slave of the emperor. And so she frees him, and he flees at the end of the first book, and then she's left with this knowledge that she's going to become a demon. So next book picks up, she's back in the castle, she's turning into a demon. Idan, the wizard, has fled to like kind of his old monastery where he trained to be a wizard. And Maya is kind of in hot water with the emperor, but he's still he's like, if you play by my rules and do what I say and help me get Idan back, you'll be fine. And he's still making her work as his royal tailor. So the emperor is set to marry the daughter of this warlord who there had been a war between the warlord and the emperor, and their marriage is supposed to be part of the peace. And in the first quarter of the book, that whole wedding thing gets blown up, like just blown up multiple times. And that kind of leads into one of the big problems I had with this book, in that stuff would happen and a character would take actions to do something, and stuff would happen and the character would wind up right back where they started. And that's fine if it happens once, but when it happens like 3 or 4 times, like the first part of this book, Maya is like betraying and then swearing allegiance to the emperor, and betraying and like swearing she'll work for him, and then betraying and swearing, and she just keeps like doing the thing but coming back to the same place. Like nothing happens, nothing progresses, nothing changes. Actually, it's just like a lot of, I don't know, failed hullabaloo. That's how it feels reading it. I feel really old saying the word hullabaloo, but that's just what it feels like, because it's all nonsense. It doesn't build to anything. It doesn't grow the character, and I think that's what it meant to do, but it doesn't. And that ties into like my second problem with this book, is that there's no character growth, like with between the different characters. So we've got Maya, and we've got Idan the wizard, and then we've got the warlord's daughter, whose name I am forgetting. I'm gonna look it up real fast, because I think she was one of the really Sarnai. So I think Sarnai was a really missed opportunity. So we have Sarnai, the warlord's daughter. We have, to a lesser degree, Maya's brother. But I think the 3 principal characters are really Maya, Idan, Sarnai. And we never get any character growth or any inter-character development between Maya and Sarnai. We get a lot of like action pieces happening around them, but no actual character building, no actual character connection. And this is told in first person POV from Maya's POV. So she needs to be growing and connecting positively or negatively with other characters, like on an actual real level. But it's just like it's just set pieces. It's just things moving around a board, but there's no connection between any of these characters. Like, there were just a lot of missed opportunities. So, like, because, like, at the beginning of the book, Sarnai flees because she doesn't want to marry the Emperor, and then Maya helps the Emperor track Sarnai down and bring her back. And then she's supposed to be dressing her in one of the dresses from the previous book for her wedding, but that burns Sarnai. So then she's impersonating Sarnai, but then she gets discovered. And so then the Emperor is really pissed about that. It's just, it's like one thing after another, but there's like no, but it's just stuff happening. It's just actions happening. I don't know. It's really tough to describe. But the impression I got when I was reading this book is that the first half of the first book felt like it was something that the author took a lot of time to develop and possibly rewrite until it was really good. It was rich. There was like character growth and development to make the characters feel real and compelling. But the second half and then the sequel feel like they were really written really quickly and without a lot of development. They feel very underdeveloped at the end of the day because it's just a lot of very repetitive things happening over and over. Like, I really can't stress enough, this opening section was just like Maya going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth without affecting any kind of change towards anything. And oh my God, I think she fainted like 12 times in this book. It was such a irritating cop-out. It was like the author didn't know what else to do but like overextend her and then have her pass out so she could skip ahead in like the timeline, I guess. And by timeline, I mean skip ahead a couple of hours. But man, it was like she probably passed out 5 or 6 times just in the opening 20%. I kid you not. Another thing that I was just like, we couldn't have come up with some other outcome to all of this at least one time. Another thing that again ties into the, I think, underdeveloped characters. So I mentioned that I just felt like there was a missed opportunity between developing some sort of relationship, be it antagonistic or not, between Sarnai and Maya. But the other big relationship in the book is between Maya and Edan. So Edan is the wizard and the love interest. And they fall in love in the first book. And then it really felt like, because they'd already fallen in love, the author didn't feel like she needed to do anything else to develop their relationship in the second book. He is off screen for large portions of the book. And when they're together, the author just doesn't do anything with them. I guess they're just in love and that's it. It's just assumed that they're fine. And that's just not super compelling. I'm not saying there needs to be conflict, but like they didn't feel like a couple. I guess they were still doing stuff because they were in love, but I don't know how to explain this. It has been about 6 weeks since I read the book, but I think the problems I have with it, they're tough to articulate in really clear ways because maybe it's just a personal taste thing. I don't think so. However, I do admit that the underdeveloped character relationships might just be a real issue I'm having with it. Maybe another reader wouldn't. I do fully admit that. But also, I just wasn't super invested in the plot. There's this whole conflict between the warlord and the emperor, And there's the internal conflict of Maya becoming a demon. She basically does become a demon by the end of it. But I just felt so disconnected from everything. We're just in Maya's head and she just faints a lot. That's how I felt by the time I got to the end of the book. It's a bummer. This book felt rushed. And that's just, yeah, that's why I gave it like 2.5 stars. If you've read the first book and the third act didn't bother you, like you enjoyed the third act, then I think you would like this sequel and it would be fine. If you read the first book and you don't like the third act, unfortunately, I'm going to have to say this book is just more of that third act. So if it bugged you there, you might want to give this a miss, to be perfectly honest. I'm really sad that I can't give this a better review. Like, really, Spin the Dawn was one of my most disappointing reads last year just because I loved the first half so much, but the second half let me down so much. And unfortunately, the sequel kind of let me down a lot too. Okay, so hopefully my thoughts on this book made some sort of sense. I don't feel like they did, but there you have it. If you have any questions about this book, feel free to leave them down below in the comments. I will try to answer them. I'll also leave links to the Goodreads page and Amazon if you're interested in reading it. Like I said, I do feel like maybe I am being a little bit harsh, but I have to give my honest opinion, and that's my honest opinion. So yeah, there you go. Let me know if you've read this book or the first book in the duology, if you liked it, if you didn't. We can have a chat down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.